Okay, first and foremost, there is this wengine, and I just hope that it just might. Give me what I want, what I really, really want. And it didn't. Appa, please. No. Appa, please. No. Come on, start with 3. Appa, please. Come on, twice into Appa. Well, we did go into Appa once, so... Maybe once more? No. In that case... It goes twice more into anomaly proficiency. No, it will be absolved. No. It didn't. Meaning that it can't. Meaning that it is trash. Okay. Crit damage or attack percent, please. Attack. Okay. Well. Come on, Appa, please. And it can't be the one that I want. This one. Appa, please. No. So 5, and I need 3 of them, meaning that I need plus 6. To be certain, come on, above please. No. If it goes 9 to... Okay. Attack percent or crit rate, please. Okay. Still right. K6. 9. Okay, let's see. All are apart. Wow. Okay. Oh, ебать. Так. Come on up. But not like this. Maybe it's still something. One attack percent. I'm still right. Okay, 9. Hyper, please. No. 12, 15. No. Trash. Hyper, please. No. Maybe. please? Okay, time to grind them.
The morning air is like a soothing melody, truly unforgettable. The joy that this delicious composition brings is truly remarkable. The joy that this delicious composition brings is truly remarkable. The joy that this delicious composition brings is truly remarkable. The joy that this delicious composition brings is truly remarkable. The joy that this delicious composition brings is truly remarkable. This one's flavor goes on and on. What a perfect mix. What a perfect mix. The joy that this delicious composition brings is truly remarkable. This one's flavor goes on and on.
To AP, one attack. More upper, please. Come on, up here. And it's double attack, double attack.
The joy that this delicious composition
Good
brings
drive
is
disc
truly remarkable.
with 4 substats and the correct stats. Ever, please? No. Still good disc, apparently.
It's truly remarkable. Come back again soon.
Got a new ghost story to share?
Wanna be my research subject?
Okay. This one has attack percent, please. Should I? I'm not sure. Neither am I sure here. Hyper, please. Nice. Apple, please. mm. Please. 10%. No. You can go do your stuff. Apple, please. Okay. Nine. From 9. If it doesn't go, once. There's not much left. Apple, please. No. Apple, please. No. Trash. Four times left. I need 3 of them to be successful. Going up to 9. Okay. I'm going up to 12. Apple, please. No. And now it is considered useless. Mora.
Wanna be my research subject?
Yeah. Some more tomorrow. 3. Bounty commission. Already claim. There is a shield defense. Fire physical. And electric. Well, let's go like this.
Okay.
That was key.
Sorry.
Ready for a fiery feast?
Now, you're the prey. Save your strength. Adjusting for wind. Roger. Ready. Increase firepower. What you deserve. Off balance. Show no mercy. Now you pay. Too slow. Ether vision activate. Right on cue. Holding position. Copy. It's time. Move it. Press the advantage. Duel like Brandon. What you deserve. Engage Sniper's Creed. One shot, one kill. Engaging. You're in the
Nice ether. Yeah, whatever.
My blade's gonna rust without enemies to fight.
Because that original tweet got
The
some
rise of
heated
friend slop and its effect on our industry.
responses from people saying that it's just a lowbrow way of saying co-op multiplayer game. However, to me, that would be like trying to get mad at the first person to call PUBG a battle royale and saying that the genre already has a name and that it's a team-based shooter. So the way that I'm choosing to define friend slop is that they are games that are cheap, involve a simple gameplay loop, and are made by an indie studio with the specific intention of having friends enhance the experience by playing it together. In today's video, I want to explore the history of the genre, go into why it's been successful, and whether or not it is good for the industry as a whole. While Lethal Company is the first horseman of the recent friend slop apocalypse, there are some games that I see as precursors to the genre.
Let's make this quick.
Mount Your Friends is an almost prop-like game where you play as these beefcake ragdolls wearing banana hammocks, trying to create and climb up a tower of sweaty buff men. Whoever fails to climb the ever-enlarging tower within the time limit loses. This game took off about a decade ago, primarily because of content creators like PewDiePie. Between the overly long nipples of the characters, the name Mount Your Friends, and the dick and balls on full display, this game fully captures the humor of 2013, that being homoeroticism as a punchline. Ultimately, it was a cheap $5 game that released on Steam and it appealed to the immature and competitive mindset of friend groups with a bit of time to it. I think Quiplash is the next major forefather to the friend slop genre. You're given prompts that you anonymously answer, and your answer is pitted against that of another person, while everybody else votes on whichever one was the funniest. What makes this fundamental to the ethos of friend slop, in my opinion, is that Quiplash is only as fun as your friends are. If your friends are boring, games like Lethal Company are equally boring, and if their humor sucks, your round of Quiplash will suck. Next game is Genital Jousting, which I am not going to show a single unblurred frame of. Okay, you get one frame right here. Essentially, you play as a set of f***ing balls with an asshole, and your goal is to sodomize one another. The game is $6.99 and sometimes goes on sale for 69 cents. Do you get it? It's the funny sex number! Moving on. The final forefather to the friend slop genre that I want to talk about is probably the most influential to the genre as a whole, and that is Among Us. While it came out in 2018, it had a payday in 2020 because of, you know, the Rona. While we were all stuck in lockdown, we turned to YouTube and Twitch. Streamers started playing the funny space game, and we all thought to ourselves, oh, for $5, I too can play Mafia with my friends and family while we all stay socially distant. And just like that, we made multi-millionaires out of a small team of indie game developers. The game is at its best when you're with a group of people you know, in a Discord call, or maybe even with a proximity chat mod. Among Us was truly a moment in time and is absolutely the major precursor to the recent surge in cheap indie co-op games. There are probably a few other games that you could very rightly say fit in this category of trailblazers for friend slop. You got like Human Fall Flat, Heave Ho, Ultimate Chicken Horse. Maybe you could say Phasmophobia and Dead by Daylight, but I was thinking mostly games that are $10 or less and that have a more simple gameplay. But now let's move on to what this video is truly about. Lethal Company and those games that came after.
No room for mercy.
Lethal Company came out in October of 2023 and is the game that is responsible for the modern era of friend slop. This game came out of nowhere, it went viral, and it changed the indie game scene for the foreseeable future. It was developed by a single guy named Zeekers, and it casts you and your friends as the employees of the company. You go on dangerous excursions to find loot and satisfy ever-increasing quotas set by the company. It's got everything you could ever want from a multiplayer video game. You've got wild monsters, proximity chat, and OSHA violations out the wazoo. It also helps that this whole game is basically slapstick comedy simulator, and it begs to be clipped and posted to TikTok.
Alright, fuck it, I'm leaving, bro. If I don't make it.
But I do want to touch more on the proximity chat because I feel that was key to Lethal Company's success. It made professional voice actors out of friend groups. Whether you're hearing the distant screams of a friend in peril, or the muffled gurgles of some poor soul as they drown, The sound design revolving around the proximity chat is nothing short of incredible. As the game took the hell off on social media platforms, content creators jumped on it, hoping that they could get a slice of that viral pie. As a game that was made by a sole developer, it probably would have been a quick burn before all the content was sucked out of it, were it not for the modders who also flocked to this game. Lobby player counts can increase from 4 to whatever the hell you can handle until your game crashes. New monsters, levels, items, emotes, and customization options were added. Small quality of life mods address player pain points, and hell, even a VR mod was added to the game. If the game's initial virality made Lethal Company a success, then the modding community is what made the game an industry shaker. And just like how PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds started the Battle Royale genre that hundreds of developers soon followed, Lethal Company lit a spark in the inexpensive, silly co-op game genre that was soon followed by many others. Content Warning was the first game to jump on the FriendSwap hype train, coming out less than 6 months after Lethal Company. It came out so soon after, and it was so similar in nature that I was wondering if Zeekers and Landfall Games ended up having the same idea around the same time. But no. While Lethal Company was in development for about 2 years before going into early access, Content Warning was a result of a game jam, which is an exercise where a group of developers lock in for a few weeks and crank out a game. So in a sense, Content Warning is truly the first actual FriendSwap game. Much like Lethal Company, Content Warning involves a group of people venturing out from their safe home base to a dangerous area in hopes of finding loot. However, the loot in question here is just content. You have a video camera capable of recording up to 90 seconds of footage, and you try to go viral on SpookTube by filming monsters. If you don't get enough views, then you hang up the camera, give up on your passion of becoming a content creator, and die of sadness. Content Warning had a very specific janky charm to it, and I really appreciated what Landfall set out to do and the meta-narrative behind all of this. They knew that the game was going to live or die based on people who wanted to make content out of it. The game did fairly well for itself, peaking at nearly 70,000 players, which certainly isn't nothing for a game developed in less than a month. However, it did not get nearly to the heights of Lethal Company. You could blame it on releasing too soon after Lethal Company, or being too similar, or maybe having a less than stellar post-launch support. But at the end of the day, its moderate success proved that there was an appetite for cheap games that were dumb fun. The next several months saw a handful of games that could be considered FriendSwap. One of the more notable ones is Murky Divers, which asked, what if Lethal Company but underwater? And while it was a fun game, it definitely underperformed compared to the others in its cohort. It wasn't until early 2025 when we started to see some more heavy hitters in the genre. Repo released in February of 2025 from Swedish game studio Semiworks, and it did a great job of harkening back to Lethal Company while also expanding on the gameplay loop that Zeekers had already laid out. You're still going into dangerous areas full of monsters, and you're pillaging them of their resources, and there's still proximity chat shenanigans, but there's a bit more of a forced cooperation in Repo. Unlike Lethal, the items you loot can be hazards in and of themselves. Some are heavy, some are awkwardly shaped, and some are cursed. And items lose value if they're dropped or bonked, and can completely shatter if you're not careful. Therefore, it's a lot more viable, or you could argue necessary, to travel with the buddy system, so you can have 2 people carry heavy or awkward objects, or use one person to distract the monsters while the other carries a fragile object. Unlike Content Warning or Murky Divers, this game is performed on par with Lethal Company, in spite of the nasty covering. I think the major contributing factor to this is enough time had passed, so there's a bit of a hunger for another silly horror roguelike cooperative game with proximity chat. Either that or they have really good marketing. I don't know, I'm not an industry analyst. Around this time is when the term FriendSwap was coined. Once again, while this term was coined as a joke, there was a genuine bit of frustration or concern that this was the direction that the industry was heading. Every few weeks, a new cheap indie horror extraction roguelike game with proximity chat was being announced, and even bigger studios coming out with multiplayer games were accused of just making expensive FriendSwap. But I personally think we didn't need to shift away from cheap co-op experiences. I think at this time, what we needed most was a different cheap co-op experience. And that's when Peaks came into play. Peaks came out in the summer of 2025 and was developed by the tag team duo of Agrocrab and Landfall. The teams came up with the idea while hanging out in a hot tub, game jammed it out for a couple of weeks before deciding to expand on it for a few more months. This is such a weird situation because you almost never see two indie game developers that are completely independent of each other work in tandem to make a game together. However, this works so well. Aggro Crab, the makers of games like Another Crab's Treasure, specialize in cute vibes and they were able to bring that to the table. Meanwhile, Landfall, having made games like Content Warning, Totally Accurate Battle Simulator, and a whole bunch of other really cheap multiplayer games, they brought that experience as well, and together they were able to mishmash them and create heat. You play as a group of scouts whose flight crashes on an island with a giant mountain, and you need to reach the peak of that mountain in order to be rescued. And it has all the trappings that you would expect from the genre. Proximity chat, slapstick humor, cannibalism, an incredibly simple gameplay loop, and a potential fun factor that depends on who you play with. It's also super clippable, so there's that too. Another unique thing about Peak that other friend slot games don't really do is there is a specific tangible goal that you are trying to reach. It feels like a lot of friend slot games are like, yeah, let's just keep surviving until you don't. It's also a nice breath of fresh air in the sense that most of these other games have been close quarters horror-focused experiences, while this is a bright and colorful game that is very decidedly a non-horror experience. Blowing the lid off of expectations like that after a year and a half of these games being mainly extraction looters shows that there can be variety in cheap co-op gaming experiences. With all that being said, is friend swap a good thing? I personally would go out on a limb and say yes, friend swap is generally a good thing for the video game industry as long as developers innovate. I don't know if you've noticed, but the industry is kind of on fire right now. Development costs are ballooning and people are getting laid off left and right. So if a 20-year-old furry wants to use his spare time to become a millionaire off of a cheap, silly game that I play with my friends a few times, hell yeah, dude, all the power to you. I mean it with every fiber in my being when I say that independent game developers are carrying the industry on their backs right now. We're in a position where we need good games that are made cheaper and quicker as opposed to billion-dollar games made over 10 years and have half a team laid off as soon as it releases. But once again, I think this is a good thing as long as the developers innovate. We've already seen a few games try to reheat Lethal Company's nachos and underperform. I think the extraction looter roguelike brand of games has kind of run its course with Repo. I could absolutely be wrong. We'll have to wait and see. But if Peak showed us anything, is that there's an appetite for co-op games with objectives that aren't just loot stuff until you fail to loot enough stuff. Here are a few ideas that I came up with after I set a 5-minute timer on my phone. If you use any of these, let me know and give me a free copy, but you're welcome. A criticism that I've heard about Friend Swap is that they're rarely sustainable games in the long run and tend to have a short lifespan, which I find it kind of hard to care too much about, to be honest. I've spent $60 on games that I've beaten in 10 hours and never touched again. Why should I care if I spend $10 on a co-op game I play with my friends for a few fun nights and move on? It gives friend groups a chance to kind of hang out and catch up, and it's cheaper than going out to dinner, doing a round of golf, or going out for drinks. Though just to be clear, I'm not saying that playing video games needs to replace going out and touching grass and hanging out with people in person. I think that's very important. I'm just saying that friend swap is a good supplement to hanging out. But anyway, there's this odd obsession with multiplayer games needing to receive new free content every month or so, or else the developers are failures, and I struggle to agree with that. Not every online game is meant to be updated in perpetuity, and that is totally fine. In fact, I honestly kind of feel like that's one of the core pillars of friend swap. These games feel like they're meant to be moments in time as they go viral, have millions of people play them, spawn a treasure trove of funny videos, and then fade out. And then sometime later, we look back on them fondly, remembering the good times and the people we shared those good times with. But anyway, my name is Freaking Nick. I hope this video was a good watch. If you liked it, please consider subscribing or click on this recommended video for you. And the next time your retinas get cursed by having one of my videos pop up in your recommended feed, I hope you choose to watch it. If not, I hope you have a great life and that you take care of yourself. Bye now.
Swift yet still. Release. The weak spot is here.
A question for you, Bones and Ghouls. Do you ever find yourself going back to a game you haven't played in a while, or even starting a new game plus run of a game you just finished, and you end up taking basically the same build as you did the last time around and make all the same choices as before? I'm guilty of that myself and became really aware of it when we were streaming Typhon a while ago, and I realized that I basically did the same build from my original save file back in 2017. It makes you wonder what you're missing out on. So the next game I played, I decided I was going to see what I was missing by sticking to my usual path. I've been meaning to finally make a standalone video on Dishonored because Dishonored is great, and this is the perfect opportunity to really get a good look at what I'm missing. Just to cover our bases here, Dishonored is a stealth action immersive sim by Arcane, made in 2012, where you play as one Corvo Atano, bodyguard to the Empress, and the fall guy for a coup involving assassination of said Empress. You get rescued from prison by a group of loyalists who want to put the Empress's daughter back on the throne. But you also get granted spectacular abilities by an entity called the Outsider, who, while viewed as an analog to the devil by some groups in the world of Dishonored, the Outsider himself describes himself as neither good nor evil, and what people do with the powers he grants them is up to them. We're going to take the Outsider up on that idea by playing through the whole game twice. Once following the rules of the Clean Hands achievement, where we kill no one and avoid violence whenever possible, and then we do the exact opposite. We choose violence every time. Now, before we get into our twin runs of Dishonored, let's take a sec to give a shout out to indie devs who put out free demos of their games for us to check out. Come on, you guys know I don't really like doing ads. I'm trying to put the demo showcase here in the beginning of the video where an ad integration might go to see how that fares versus right at the end of the video when we're wrapping up, as a good number of folks already click off at around that time. Let me know if you like these shout-outs at the beginning or the end of the videos. I'm going to be helping out demos and indies however I can. I just want to do it as efficiently as possible. Today we're giving a shout-out to Aquametsis. If you like sneaking around and taking out bad guys one by one in big vertical levels like in Dishonored, you're going to like Aquametsis. Aquametsis has you playing the role of an operator specializing in amphibious infiltration, who's been tasked with retrieving some documents on an offshore military base by whatever means you see fit. As far as I know, there are no time-skipping cigars. Aquametsis has a whole lot of space and verticality in just a tutorial alone, and there are a whole lot of systems to play with, like customizable weapons, biomods, stealth versus out-loud combat, and everything in between. And you even get this cool little scout truck. I got a solid hour out of the tutorial alone for Aquametsis, and it's got me interested in what comes next in the full game. As always, it's a demo, so it is totally free to check out right now, and if you like it, give the main game a wish list so that you can be there when it comes out. Now, let's get to sneaking around the city of Dunwall. A brief primer before we start comparing and contrasting our runs. So the Outsider was sort of telling the truth about his powers being neither good nor evil. Dishonored has this thing called the Chaos System that was hyped up a lot and talked about even to this day. Heck, I mentioned it in my own video on Skin Deep we did a little while ago. The Chaos System governs the state of the world around you based on how much chaos you cause mission to mission. Now, I initially, among others, thought it was mainly to do with how many people you killed, particularly mission targets, which will govern enemy placement and the ending you get. Well, yeah, it does that, but it does a lot more. Like, basically, everything in this game has at least something to do with the Chaos System. Like, I didn't think all that much of it when I first played Dishonored back in the day, but a quick trip to the wiki to double-check what exactly I had caused on my runs, and, yeah, it turns out every little thing you can do can not only cause chaos, but there are also things that reduce chaos. In hindsight, it makes a lot of sense that doing certain side quests where you don't necessarily kill people but still do a lot of harm will increase your chaos rating even if it doesn't violate the Clean Hands rule, but in the very same mission, you can do enough chaos reducing things to entirely negate any chaos you got from a side quest. I think it'd be better to just go through how each playthrough feels, though, rather than pick apart a list of minor differences, so let's do that. By the way, there will be some minor spoilers for stuff like mission targets, but we aren't going into any serious plotting. We're just going to be talking about the gameplay and the effects of your playstyle. Let's start with our good boy Clean Hands run. I've never actually done a full-on Clean Hands playthrough in Dishonored until now. While I usually do spare people whenever possible, if a person's gotta go for the sake of keeping myself, so be it. Like, there are too many just
The buffs in this abyss are really nice. Not abyss. But you know what? Thing is, for agents, electrical will over. For agents. That's just really fucking nice buff, because everyone is going to be affected by anomaly. I need 37 seconds. That is nice. Okay. 7. Sure, 7. I mean, I want both. And both vengeance.
really cool abilities in this game to not occasionally sentence a man to death for the crime of showing up to his shift as a little treat. Too bad I can't use those abilities for this run. The start of a clean hands run is rough, like really rough. You never realize just how slow takedowns are until you've got to get through that one area at the very start of Coldridge Prison and have to reload more times in that one part than you've ever had to reload in that level during previous runs, since you aren't allowed to kill people, and if you get caught, you have to reload, as you don't really have any means of effectively breaking detection right about now. For reference, I played both of my runs on the hard difficulty, and yeah, back to referencing skin deep, but I just had come off my playthrough of that and didn't realize how forgiving some games, particularly more recent stealth games, are with what counts as detection. And when you play something like Dishonored on the harder difficulties, where if a guard could reasonably see you IRL, you're gonna get detected. Crouching down behind a plant or something isn't gonna keep you from being spotted. My first run had me using one ability a whole lot for the first 2/3 of the game. F5, F9. You gotta quick save and quick load a ton when you're doing clean hands, up until you can really invest in your stealth and mobility powers, and maybe the combat sleep dart too, because dudes will hunt you to the ends of the earth once they've seen you. Now, in the sake of fairness, this is expected if not intended. Dishonored is a game where the loading screen tips are things like, yeah, save a lot, buddy, you're gonna need it. However, that doesn't change that sometimes I'd spend close to an hour on the same section of a level, and having some levels be painfully slow to trudge through because guards kept seeing me from way downtown, or an action I had to take ended up alerting guards unless I did it in a very specific way. The flow of the game suffers greatly from this. Yeah, you'll eventually get to the point where you can either slip by or gently hug all the baddies in an area to sleep, but you're going to be doing a lot of reloading if you want to get to the next area without having to kill anyone. You're not going to be using a lot of stuff either, because you'll be trying not to kill people. And that means, unfortunately, you're locked out of using most of your gear in all the cool abilities. What doubly sucks is that the sleep darts, which are going to be your bread and butter for taking out dudes from a distance or getting out of detection, are one of the few things that you cannot upgrade the ammo capacity of. You're gonna be giving a lot of dudes hugs from behind. Be careful. You gotta catch them before they fall when you hug them, because if they fall off a ledge or into a body of water for even a second, they die, which I'm pretty sure counts as a kill, which violates clean hands, at least in spirit. With a clean hands run, I found myself being funneled into a handful of abilities, mainly blink, time stop, and occasionally possession. I did get the spooky vision, which mainly ended up being for looking for trinkets, but other than that, I didn't use it all that much because it feels cheap, and while I did just decide, hey, I'm gonna get whirlwind because no one ever uses it, I ended up never using it despite spending all those runes on it because I was worried I might accidentally kill an enemy by launching them off a ledge. In spite of all this, I found myself being much more creative in my clean hands run. I spent a lot of time finding alternate paths and looking for ways to get past security checkpoints since I couldn't just go through them or get in a fight to take the dudes out. You really do not have any combat prowess in a clean hands run, thanks to even after you get combat sleep darts, some enemies taking more than a single dart to bring down when aggroed, and remember, you can only have up to 10 of those suckers total, and most of the time you're not going to be capped off. Even with the bone charm that will allow you to find more pickups. It was funny. At one point, I was so sim brained, just looking for alternate paths and unorthodox solutions to getting past guards, that I got stuck in the starting area of the Sokolov mission for a good 10 minutes or so. I tried to climb up and over the buildings to go through the rooftop. I tried turning into a fish and attempting to swim through the little gaps in the piers. I tried going inside the buildings from that one billboard. I tried seeing if there was a key I needed to steal off a guard for something. It turned out my dumbass just needed to walk through an unlocked door. This is your brain on stacking boxes, kids. The whole mission was rough. A lot of the missions are rough, and you'll be spending a lot of time reloading, and maybe even more time than you do actually playing as you learn the tolerances of detection, and you spend every coin and rune you have on getting stuff that makes you harder to see and better at getting away when the bad guys inevitably see you. But it does get easier. I'm sure this is part of low chaos coming to play, but also part of getting comfortable with your build and playstyle. But by the time you get back to the Royal Palace to deal with the Spy Master, acting as Lord Regent, things get really easy. There are hardly any guys around because the way you've been playing, the story is interpreted that hardly anyone ever sees Corvo, and all that people really know is that he got out of prison somehow. And you haven't been active according to them. There's just been a series of accidents and career-ruining boondoggles that have been happening to everyone that was involved in the coup. You know what, I'm not changing that, it's just coup. On that note, despite us quote-unquote sparing all the major targets in Dishonored, most of these are fates worse than death. We're doing the equivalent of excommunication to a guy who built his whole life around the equivalent of the church, which is also heavily implied to make that person a complete societal pariah. Okay, maybe that's not a fate worse than death, but that's still really messed up. Then we hire a guy to kidnap a couple dudes, cut out their tongues, and make them go work in their own mine, which is arguably poetic justice, but also extreme. Unfortunately, we also cannot kill Sokolov. And then there is, whatever's going on cannot kill Sokolov. And then extreme. Unfortunately, we also cannot kill Sokolov. And then there is, whatever's going on with this guy and Lady Boyle. And finally, the only one who's sparing seems to be us not granting them a fate worse than death is the Grand Regent, who we just exposed for all the really horrific stuff he did, and he gets rightfully arrested. If anything, this is the one time where sparing someone isn't us being overly punitive. We're just bringing them to justice. Lastly, I consider Dowd more of a showdown between two rivals than an assassination, so I'm not really counting him. Back to the late game though. When we're just gonna sneak around the mission and then dart whoever we need to dart to keep things quiet, it's a breeze, since that's the only thing we've been doing all game. And not only have we been getting very good at it, but we've also gotten a lot of upgrades into those relevant skills. And I'm not exactly springing for exploding bullets on this run, so we have all the cash in the world to get the stuff that we want. I had to reload a fair amount on the rooftops in the flooded district, but not nearly as much as earlier levels, and confronting Dowd was basically just teleporting behind him and giving him a little hug, just like everyone else in the game so far. I actually tried to fight him non-lethally just to see what happened, and man, that dude can take a lot of tranquilizer without even so much as slowing down. Going back to the Hound's Pit pub was a non-issue, and I think King Sparrow Island took me less than 20 minutes according to my footage, and it was so easy it felt a bit disappointing when I got to the credits, like a, oh, that's it type of moment. Cooking segment. Welcome to round 2 of Dishonored, Maximum Violence Edition. We are now making it a point to choose the most violent solution possible for every problem we encounter in order to rack up as much chaos as possible. we are going to leave nothing but overfed rats in our wake, and we will finally get to use the ultimate weapon. Gun! An intentionally high chaos playthrough is a totally different animal from clean hands, even if you're just gonna sneak around. Which I did do a bit of sneaking around violence, but I also got really into the out loud combat since there's so many items and abilities that you only get to use if you're gonna start a big loud fight. As much as I ended up taking and even relying on alternate paths for my clean hands run in the previous playthrough, and ones I've done in the past, I ended up going on paths I've never seen before in my maximum violence run. Mainly through enemy guard posts. There's a lot of stuff you just never see if you're sneaking around because these are places where you only go if you're going to do a lot of fighting. The main one being that like half of the Dunwall Tower level just isn't a place you end up going if you're playing clean hands. Like you basically just go to the entry area of the tower, do the thing with the voice recording, which why on earth would you record this, man? And then you get out. Also, you get the exploding gun. Best thing ever. So the biggest thing I noticed in contrast to a clean hands run is that the game flows so much better when you're just gonna turn people into new additions to the wallpaper. With how in clean hands, if you get caught, unless you're really well into the game and have like gotten every whalebone thing possible to level into your skills that let you break detection, you're gonna be mashing F5 and F9 a lot, especially the latter. In maximum violence mode, when you get detected, you just go, oh hey, I don't have to go looking for all the other guys now. This'll speed things up a bit. When murder is on the menu, getting spotted by someone isn't the end of the world, and you're able to get through most of the game a lot faster. Most of the game anyway. But more on that later on. I just breezed through some levels. As a point of reference, when I played Sokolov House on my clean hands run, it took just over 2 hours. When I played it with no regard for human life in this run, it took me less than 30 minutes, and a good 5 of that was me just seeing how many guys I could lure into an arc pylon. When I checked the metadata on my recordings, it looks like my maximum violence run as a whole was about an hour shorter than clean hands. I thought it was going to be much of a larger difference because the latter certainly feels faster. However, an hour is something that can be arguably chalked up to playing a game the second time around right off the heels of your first go round and having all the stuff you need to do fresh in your head. Some missions before the big turning point did take a little longer than they did in clean hands, but that was also because you end up doing a lot of exploring now that I was free to peruse levels without having to worry about the guards bothering me. Because I killed them all. My favorite thing about the maximum violence run is that you get to play with all the toys this time around. The gun is a monster of a weapon when you put all the upgrades into it. On that note, sometimes the AI just kind of falls apart when you're charging in guns.
Okay, that was alright. It is also alright. Special attacks or special attacks hit enemies suffering an attribute anomaly. The equiper's anomaly proficiency increases by 75 for 15 seconds. 375.
Got a new ghost story to share?
Which alias
Which
should I use
already
this
have.
time?
Almost. I almost have it. but it also can be equipped by, you know, here, then Weaver.
Literally blazing. Like, they just run at you sometimes in a conveniently tight cluster so you can just mow them down. Lucky for the guards though, level design later on in high chaos playthroughs gives them plenty more spots to take cover and flank you from, so it's a bit more of a fair fight. Moving on from gun, though you get other stuff too. Rewire tools are now much more useful than just, okay, I need to disable alarm, because you see those walls of light and the arc pylons as opportunities for efficient guard removal, and the heavy breathing really starts when you see a rocket tower. You get the cool powers too. I never realized how fun it is to summon a swarm of rats anywhere you want until I started using Devouring Swarm to just clear out entire groups of guards while cackling like a maniac at like the comical screams, like just how hokey they are because like it keeps layering on top of each other. Non-lethal things will also have a place in your toolkit because occasionally there's someone that you can't kill for some reason, and darts are a great way of making these people stay put. The best part is, thanks to your no loose ends mindset, you're gonna have all the cash in the world for upgrades because it's a lot easier to look for Sokolov paintings and other high value trinkets when all the guards that were supposed to be watching them fell victim to me wanting to summon more rats. Heck, even normal stuff starts getting wild as you finally start using the lethal crossbow and, once you really get good with it, you start asking some questions. So Corvo here has a hand crossbow that we are assuming fires an 8-ounce or 0.2 kilograms steel bolt with enough speed and force to not only instantly kill a man on impact, but also is enough to send him flying, like knock him off his feet as he dies, as we have seen several kill cams of. Assuming that this man weighs 80 to 85 kilograms, like their average security guard sized dude, and we are assuming 45 meters per second squared, or whatever this ends up being, what does the draw strength on this bow have to be to accelerate this 8-ounce steel bolt fast enough to do that? What is the draw strength here? And is that even physically possible for Corvo to draw on such a small crossbow? Like how much force does this crossbow need to do? Like how much force does this crossbow need to shoot something at to make that work? That is the question, and I want a goddamn answer. Perhaps my favorite discovery when playing with as much out loud turbo violence as possible is that Dishonored has a proper boss fight in it, and hot damn is it a good time. When you give Dowd a chance to fight you, it's one hell of a showdown. Like in the Clean Hands run, Dowd is just some guy who set you up and you just need to get the key and move on. But when you're actually out to get him, the dude really is your equal. Like, man, I love figuring out how the time stop works when two different people are using that ability and how fast he moves around. It's a tough fight, and the second most I had to reload on this run, but it was that fun kind of reloading when you're learning a boss's patterns and how to beat them. I personally believe that unless a boss is meant to be a tutorial boss like Iodex Gundyr back in Dark Souls 3, if you can first try a boss you've never encountered before, that boss was perhaps too easy and might need some tweaking. Dowd does not disappoint when you're actually fighting him. So just like how the maximum violence run is the inverse of the Clean Hands run, the turning point in the playthrough is also inverted. Back in the Goody Two Shoes Clean Hands run, Dunwall Tower was the point where you were starting to get so good at your playstyle that you were just breezing through things as you've got all the tools you need and you're just playing how you want to play. And since you're keeping chaos levels low as possible, there's hardly going to be anyone to sneak around as you gently hug your targets until they fall asleep. By the time you get to King Sparrow Island, it's disappointing, but we've already gone over this. In Maximum Violence, however, Dunwall Tower is where you notice, hey, these guys are really starting to put up a fight. It's satisfying in a totally different way than the rewards of low chaos and makes for a better endgame in my opinion. Between the Dowd fight and then the enormous brawl that was King Sparrow Island on high chaos, I had a great time and I was really feeling challenged getting through the outer layers of the island's defenses. The only downside to this though is that you end up disappointing Samuel the Boatman. Emily and the other loyalists are whatever, but Samuel was literally there for us in all of our missions. I'm sorry, Samuel. Now that I've gone through playstyles on opposite extremes of the good boy meter, it not only gave me insight into how much your playstyle can affect your experience with Dishonored, but it also opened my eyes to stuff I hadn't even seen before in this game. Take that Dowd boss fight, for example. In hindsight, my usual playthrough of mostly sneaking around felt a lot less rewarding than just charging around and killing everyone that crosses my path, but at the same time, there's still certain stuff you just don't get when you aren't sneaking around. These playthroughs don't even take into account other styles like completely ghosting your game, which, well, I mashed the F9 key enough during my Clean Hands playthrough, I think I'm gonna pass on that one. What really matters here is that it's worth it to take the road you don't usually travel because you never know what you're missing, not just here in Dishonored, but in other games too. Now, I know what you might be thinking right now, and don't worry, I didn't forget about the DLCs. In fact, I've made the call to not even so much as have any of them installed for these runs, so that I didn't have my experience being watered down by having all those pre-order bonus bone charms you get from all the different places that had pre-order specials back in the day, because that was the style at the time. I've also decided that the Knife of Dunwall and the Brigamore Witches are worthy of their own video since Arcane's always made some really good DLCs. No idea when that video is going to happen though, because Halloween in July is literally just a couple weeks away. And that'll do it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and please remember to like the video, leave a little comment, and subscribe. It really helps me get into the algorithm so that I can keep at it and other people can see videos like this one. Up next is hopefully going to be a video about System Shock 2 Anniversary Remaster, which at the time of writing and
System Shock 2 Remaster was everything I wanted it to be. Rayman Crash, the best immersive sim, is now the best roguelike. Yeah, it is. System Shock 2 Remaster was everything I wanted it to be. Let's play this.
Greetings, bones and ghouls. It's time for Halloween in July. I was not expecting to start this off with System Shock 2, but hey, the many are considered an alien life form by everyone on the Von Braun, so it fits this year's theme. We're taking the whole month and then some to do a bunch of spooky games and have a spooky good time. This year the theme is Alien Encounters, which System Shock 2 totally fits. So you know what, we're gonna do it. It's like, I'm not gonna not do this. What's really special about Halloween in July is that's when I slash my yearly rate on the Patreon as low as it'll go. And to sweeten the deal, anyone who pledges at that yearly rate gets their own patron patch as a free thank you gift. And anyone who pledges at the $5 recipe tier or higher to follow along with all the cooking segments gets their own patron apron to do all the cooking segments in. And as an even bigger thank you gift, because I am so DIY, I have finally gotten all the stuff I need to make the aprons at my home. So with the savings that I make from just not needing anyone else to do these for me, I am throwing in a special secret surprise gift on top of all the aprons for this year at the $5 tier or higher. I love these things. They're so dorky. You need one of these in your life. Trust me, it is the best free gift you will ever receive. So I know why we're all here. The System Shock 2 Remaster is finally out on PC. Behold, System Shock 2 25th Anniversary Remaster. That's a mouthful, so from here on out, we're just gonna try to call it the remaster most of the time. This has been a long while in the works, and if I remember right, was a Kickstarter reward or bonus thing for the original System Shock remake way back in the day. Well, it's finally here. I did a video on System Shock 2 way back in the day before I was really aware that the remaster was going to be a thing, and I'm more than happy to get into this because the best thing about a good remaster is that now this game that was meant to run initially on late 90s Windows operating systems can now run on modern OSs just fine in just about any modern resolution and frame rate. For this video, I had the remaster running at 1440p at 120 frames per second in borderless mode, and it ran amazingly well, even with OBS and all the other bits and bobs running alongside it. If that's not enough to sell you on this remaster of a classic game, let's talk about the everything else. But first, let's do a shout out to a cool demo from a promising indie. This is going to be the last demo shout out for a bit because in case you didn't know, I make all the Halloween in July videos in advance or else it just wouldn't work. And I only got the idea to start doing the demo shout outs a couple months ago. For now though, let's talk about Pigface. Pigface is a game where you play as Exit, someone who is very good at violence and is currently being extorted into doing that violence for an unknown malefactor. The demo plays like a first-person Hotline Miami, and I had a blast playing around with all the guns. You can sneak, you can rampage, you can use the shotgun as a bad dude launching device. There's also lots of fun physics to exploit, like enemies tripping over bodies of their fallen comrades around blind corners, and all the fun that comes with throwable melee weapons. As always, this is a demo, so it's totally free to try out, and if you like it, be sure to wishlist Pigface on Steam so that you can get notified when the full game comes out. System Shock 2 25th Anniversary Remaster is, well, a remaster. So let's talk about those remastered visuals. They're great. Lucky for me, I've got my old System Shock 2 playthrough on file, so I can show you some clips from the original version of System Shock 2 to compare and contrast. For reference, what you're seeing here for comparison to the remaster is the GOG version of System Shock 2 as played circa 2018. I don't know what mods or tweaks were added to the GOG version back then, but it ran fine at 1080p and I was able to record it with Shadowplay, which was all you could ask for in those days. I don't think I need to point out the minutia of what's being updated here. So in broad strokes, all the models and textures look great. Hell, on stream we took a solid moment to marvel at how nice a literal friggin' garbage texture looked. The animations are also massively overhauled. Here's a good example that just encompasses everything with the pistol, which is likely the first gun you're gonna get in either version of the game. In the original, the pistol's fire animation is less of an animation and essentially just the model being rotated backwards a little while a low-res muzzle flash appeared on the screen. There wasn't even a reload animation. The pistol just moved off screen, and then when it comes back up, the gun has bullets in it. In the remaster, while it's a very short animation, the pistol physically jerks back in the player's hand while the slide is sent backward to chamber a new round just like in a normal semi-automatic pistol, and a round casing flies out of the slide as the slide exposes the chamber. Yeah, there's still an explosion sprite being used for a muzzle flash, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's also a much nicer sprite. Then, you get a full reload animation where an empty magazine comes out and a full one goes in. There's even a draw animation now when you equip the pistol. This is the case for basically every weapon. I'm particularly fond of the assault rifle's reload, where at the end of inserting the new magazine, Goggles will also turn the rifle over to check the chamber. Some are more elaborate than others, and I think the animations for the wrench were intentionally kept the same for the homage to how it's also the animation for some of the stuff in the Thief games. I'm not sure about that one though. The best way to put it is that a lot of detail and care has been put into updating every last little thing, be it the enemies or the weapons and the gear, everything in the game. However, at the same time, nothing is overdone or overbuilt. It is still undeniably, aesthetically System Shock 2. The best way to put it is that Night Dive hit that sweet spot where System Shock 2 looks just like how you remembered it. To be fair, in my case, I played it nearly 20 years after the initial release, but that's still enough time to where your brain starts to fill in the blanks a little better than it should have. Nothing is super high res or looks like it belongs more in a mod pack where there are assets larger than the original game. On that note, if you're curious, the remaster is less than 3 gigs in download size and less than 4 unpacked and installed. That's always nice in the age of 100-something gigabyte games. The remaster does an excellent job in not only updating the graphics, but also making sure the game is still System Shock 2. Rather than making it the prettiest game that happens to be System Shock, Night Dive made it the best version.
Items such
We're gonna
as
start tomorrow
morals, screws.
with this Genshin Impact. Alright, that's going to be it for the stream. Good luck, fun, thanks for watching, I'll see you next time.